Welcome to this week's meeting of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. We as a club have three focuses. Number one, innovation. Number two, entrepreneurship. And three is education. And we use technology as a tool in order to meet the Rotary International goal of service above self. This week, we have a special speaker, and Peter Schnell. And Peter Schnell is a major funds officer for Rotary Foundation, and he is presently out of the office in Zurich, Switzerland. And I've been quite excited about having Peter on as a presenter, in order that you at this point of time can direct your mind to what you would like to do in terms of your gifting for the year of 2019. And as part of that, I would strongly recommend that each of you consider giving a gift to Rotary Foundation. Now, I will turn this meeting over to Peter for his presentation. Take it away, Peter.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm very excited to be part of this meeting, and I've prepared a short presentation for you. It's a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm just going to tell you a story about the Rotary Foundation, going into a bit of history, looking at the present, where we are now, and also looking a bit ahead into the future. I'd like you to understand what the Rotary Foundation is and how it functions. So let me first share the screen with you so you can see my presentation. All right, let's see if that works. Okay, can you all see my screen now?
Not yet. Sometimes there's an extra button.
Okay, let me go to this one. That better?
Yeah.
Okay, so the title of my presentation is Update on the Rotary Foundation, but it could also have been called What is the Rotary Foundation? Because I think that many people don't really know what the Rotary Foundation is, what it does, and how it works. I think once Rotarians become active at the district level, things become more clear, but at the club level, we often get many questions about the Rotary Foundation. So that's why my first slide has a question mark on it, because I would like to ask some questions and also answer them. I think when you talk about the Rotary Foundation, some of you may remember that a few years ago, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Rotary Foundation. So the Rotary Foundation has been around for over a century now. It's been part of Rotary throughout its history. If you think that Rotary was created in 1905 and the Rotary Foundation was created 12 years after that, I think it's very clear to everybody that philanthropy and doing good in the world became part of the DNA of Rotary from the very early days. So if you look at the history of the Rotary Foundation, you can see that we started pretty slowly. If you look at the first contribution that we received in 1917 of the Rotary Club of Kansas City, that was $26.50. If you calculate inflation, it's a little more now, but it was still a pretty modest start for the Rotary Foundation. And to be honest, you could say that the first couple of decades of the Rotary Foundation were mostly a North American affair. Most of the donations came from North America, and most of the programs and projects took place in North America. But this changed in 1947. And the reason for the change was basically a tragic event in Rotary. It was the year in which our founder, Paul Harris, died. And I'm not sure if any of you know this story, but Paul Harris had been ill for a while. And he had said, well, if I die when I'm no longer among you, I don't want you to send me flowers. I want you to make a donation to the Rotary Foundation. And Paul Harris, if you look at his picture, he doesn't look it, but I think he was basically, you could call him a rock star of Rotary back then, because he was extremely well known. He was well traveled, and wherever he visited a country, he was received and welcomed by the Rotary clubs there, because Rotary was well established by the time Paul Harris died. And he was a very popular figure. So his wish to support the Rotary Foundation went around the world, and suddenly the Rotary Foundation received donations from all over. That meant the Rotary Foundation also suddenly had a lot of money available in its fund. And this was basically, for me, the beginning of the International Rotary Foundation. You all know the Paul Harris Fellow, which is an official thank you of the Rotary Foundation for a gift of $1,000. That was introduced in 1957, 10 years after Paul Harris died. And you could say that after the 50s, the Rotary Foundation really took off with a number of programs that people still remember today. I think Group Study Exchange is still a very well-known program today, even though it was discontinued in 2013. Matching grants, also launched in the 60s, definitely a word that many people still know today. The principle whereby a Rotary Club has a project, an international project, works together with a club from abroad, and then comes to the Rotary Foundation and says, hey, we have money for this project. Can you help us? And the foundation says, well, we'll match it. We'll give you a certain amount of money based on what you put on the table. This principle also was launched in 1965. Matching grants were a tremendous success. Many Rotary clubs started working together internationally, using their own money and funds of the Rotary Foundation to do good in the world. In the 70s, we started thinking about size of grants. We said, well, the bigger the projects and the bigger the budget, the bigger the impact of the projects. So we launched what we called 3H grants. 3H grants stands for health, hunger, and humanity. And these were very large-scale projects that we're supposed to have a bigger impact on in a larger region. One of the first of these 3H grants was a project in the Philippines. It was a vaccination program to eradicate polio. And this project, this first 3H grant in this field, was so successful that it kind of led way for our biggest project to date, Polio Plus, also known as End Polio Now, whereby the Rotary Foundation and Rotary International have as a goal to eradicate this illness from the world. Polio no longer exists in our part of the world. Currently, it only exists in 2 countries, and we've been doing this for a long time. Polio Plus was launched in 1985, and then in 1988, we created a partnership with a number of important organizations, such as the World Health Organization, UNICEF, CDC in North America, and later also the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation joined this partnership, the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. One could say that polio is what put Rotary and the Rotary Foundation on the map in the field of philanthropy on an international level. We are seen by our partners as a reliable partner ourselves. We don't only contribute money, but we are at the table with WHO, with UNICEF. We earn a lot of respect from other organizations by taking the lead in this very important international health project. If we continue, we are almost in the present now. In 2002, we also launched the Rotary Peace Centers program. I think scholarships were also a very important part of the Rotary Foundation from its early days. And our Peace Center program, whereby we give up to 100 students every year the chance to study at certain universities in the world to study peace and diplomacy. This project is also one of our flagship programs, I would say. In 2013, we came up with a new grant model. Matching grants had been very successful, but we decided that it was time to modernize our grant structure. So we introduced district grants to support smaller local projects that were kind of managed by the district, and to support global grants, bigger international projects where Rotary clubs are required to work together with clubs in other countries. Global grants are sustainable projects of a certain scale, which have to be well planned, and the applications are checked by the Rotary Foundation. That means we know that any global grant project that takes place has a certain quality level. With global grants, we also introduced our 6 areas of focus. So we say that for global grant projects, these bigger international projects, we support projects and scholarships and vocational training teams in 6 areas of focus, which are peace, water and sanitation, health, mother and child, education, and economic and community development. These areas of focus maybe worth an extra slide. You might be interested to know which area of focus receives the most grants. Well, I prepared you a little statistic here. In the last Rotary year, we awarded 1,403 global grants to Rotary clubs worldwide, investing almost $100 million in total funding in these projects. And now with these areas of focus, we can come up with statistics. As you can see on this graph, disease prevention and treatment is, I could call it, the most popular area of focus. It's the area of focus where we receive the most grant requests. About 40% of all global grants are in this particular area of focus. Now, I should stress here that we as the Rotary Foundation, we don't prescribe that this is what it should be. This is just a statistic that shows what interests Rotary clubs worldwide. We say for every of the area of focus, we can give grants, and then clubs come to us with projects. And this is just a representation of what projects clubs came to us with worldwide in the past Rotary year. Now, when we talk about the Rotary Foundation, me as a fundraiser for the Rotary Foundation, of course, I have to talk about supporting the Rotary Foundation. And I think I would like to approach that in a way that shows you how the system works. The Rotary Foundation has different funds, and the fund that you might know best is called the Annual Fund. I call this the engine of the Rotary Foundation, because this is where the money for our grant projects comes from. You could say that this is a fund that basically has as a principle that there is solidarity between Rotary clubs worldwide, both locally and internationally. Everybody is encouraged to donate to this fund, and the clubs that come to us with the best projects, that have the ideas for the projects, or the time to organize and implement these projects, they will get the funds from this international annual fund. Maybe the term every Rotarian every year is known to you. This is where we encourage every Rotarian every year to donate a minimum of $100 to the Rotary Foundation. And this money flows into grant projects and also in certain foundation programs, for example, the Peace Center program. The second fund that you will probably know is the Polio Plus Fund. If a Rotarian donates to Polio Plus, this money is not mixed with annual fund. No, this is kept separate. And this, of course, is our #1 priority project to eradicate polio. This is where we currently have an agreement with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whereby they will match 2-to-1 every dollar that we put on the table. So every dollar a Rotarian donates to the Polio Plus Fund will be tripled by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The third fund, which is sometimes a bit lesser known, is our endowment fund. This is where we try to invest in the future of the Rotary Foundation. What does that mean? Well, it means that we accept outright donations to this fund, but also, for example, bequests and estate plan gifts, where people leave something, for example, in their will to the Rotary Foundation. And the money that goes to this fund is never spent. This money will be kept separate. It will be invested in eternity, and only investment returns are going to projects and also to certain foundation programs, very often according to the wishes of the donor. So let's try and summarize this and also give you some figures. So annual fund. This is where we receive donations from Rotarians worldwide. And these donations will go into global grant projects, district grant projects, and also in certain foundation programs. Last year, and I must apologize for the mistake in the year here, in the Rotary year 18-19, we received $126 million in donations. This money will go to projects and programs of the Rotary Foundation. The Polio Plus Fund last year, again 18-19, not 19-20, received donations worth $128.7 million. This includes the match from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because they give this money to the Rotary Foundation to be invested in polio eradication. We invest this money with the help of our partners, mostly UNICEF and WHO, to immunize children in certain countries against polio. The Endowment Fund last year received $26 million in donations. As I mentioned before, this money will not be spent. It goes to the Endowment Fund, and only investment returns will go to programs and global grants. So if you ever want to explain to somebody how the Rotary Foundation works, this very basic slide kind of gives you what it is. An annual fund where people give every year to support projects that are mostly implemented by Rotarians worldwide. A Polio Plus fund, the money goes exclusively to polio eradication, and an endowment fund where donors can support our projects in all eternity. On top of that, we also receive gifts that go directly to projects and programs. Last year, about $40 million US was given to the Rotary Foundation and went almost directly to specific grant projects and programs according to the wishes of the donors. So how efficient are we? I think when you look at charities, you always want to know how much money actually goes to programs and projects and how much money goes to administration and fundraising. Well, here's the statistic for the Rotary year 17-18. I think over the past 6 years, we were always below 10% that went directly to programs and projects. So in the Rotary year 17-18, 8% went to fund development and general administration. This is an excellent figure. I think compared to other charities, we can really show the Rotary Foundation. And if you look at external charity organizations that kind of evaluate charities, for example, Charity Navigator, I think that's one of the most known one in the US. These organizations always give us the best marks. So we claim that we're good, but also external organizations confirm that we are a well-managed charity, transparent, when we pay a lot of attention to financial stewardship. So I've talked a bit about the past, I've talked about the present, how the Rotary Foundation works. So what's new? What's going on in the Rotary Foundation? Well, a few months ago, the trustees of the Rotary Foundation decided to create another fund that can be supported called the Disaster Response Fund. I think this is a fund that many Rotarians have been asking for a while. The reason is when a natural disaster strikes a certain region of the world, whether it's in the US or in Africa or in Europe, could be a flooding, could be a big forest fire, could be an earthquake. Rotary clubs are very active immediately because it happens in their community. And we didn't really have a way of supporting these immediate reactions of Rotary clubs to a disaster, a natural disaster. Of course, we have partners like Shelterbox that we also work with. And our grant system allows us to rebuild after a disaster has struck. But now we created a fund that allows the Rotary Foundation to support immediate disaster response organized by Rotary clubs and districts in the area where a disaster struck. So it's really meant for immediate disaster relief, for rebuilding efforts. We keep these donations to this fund separate, and districts can apply for quick, easy grants to support these disaster response efforts of local Rotary clubs. A second thing I'd like to mention when I talk about news of the Rotary Foundation is something called programs of scale grants. This is a new grant type that will be launched in January 2020. And it's basically based on the principle of scale. I mentioned before that global grants support a certain size of projects, but we know that if projects have an even larger scale, the impact can be bigger, and also the sustainability of this project can be longer and more effective. So the trustees of the Rotary Foundation decided to launch a special new kind of grant called programs of scale grants. And what does it do? Well, first of all, it's competitive. It's not available for everybody. People can apply, but only a certain number of people will get these grants. And at the moment, we have said that each year we will approve only one of these very large grant projects. And the budget of the grant that they will receive is $2 million. And the idea behind this project is that it has to respond to a community need of a large number of people in a significant geographic area. People who are interested, there's more information on the Rotary website, and of course the application is competitive. Looking ahead, I think there are 3 points I'd like to mention. First of all, our aim is still and needs to be a world without polio. At the moment, there are only 2 countries left where polio exists, but if we stop now and don't finish this job, polio will bounce back. So we will always say until polio is completely eradicated, this will be our top priority. So polio will still be around for a bit, even though we are almost there. It's the last inch, the last little bit, that's the most difficult one. Second point, when you're looking ahead, is the question of environmental issues. We all know that the environment is very topical at the moment. The different issues that exist, for example, global warming, climate change. So we've heard from many Rotarians in the past years, why isn't there an area of focus for the environment? Basically, you can already do a number of environmental projects in our existing areas of focus, but this topic is being discussed by the Board of Trustees, and at the moment they are looking into how to better integrate environmental projects and issues into our current grant system. So stay tuned for
We lost him.
I think maybe we did.
You want to pause the recording?
I can do that.
also offering us money to invest in certain projects through our global grant system. So also here, I think there's a piece of news. Stay tuned for this. In future, a number of partnerships will be announced, and you'll see more of other organizations working together with the Rotary Foundation. Okay, I'm almost done with my presentation, and my last slide, or second last slide, answers the question, why support the Rotary Foundation?
Peter, I think we lost your slides, just so you know.
Okay, 1 second.
Technology.
I can still see everything the way it was. Should I? Hang on, I'll quickly. 1 second, let me see if I can get back. Okay, let's see if that works.
Yeah, that works. We can see your slides now.
Okay, let me quickly go back to the slide where I need to be. Okay, let me go to the slide I need to have. 1 second. This is where I was. Can you still see it?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so as a fundraiser, a question I should definitely be able to answer is the question, why support the Rotary Foundation? And I'd like to explain it in 2 ways. I think you could really call the Rotary Foundation a unique organization, because it is an organization led by Rotarians. It's from Rotarians, but also for Rotarians to do good in the world. So which other charity accepts donations from a group of people and then distributes that money back to the same group of people to help them with projects in a structured way? I think the Rotary Foundation is one of the most unique charities out there, and it's our charity. And what I also find fascinating about the Rotary Foundation is how it connects Rotarians worldwide. Because not only do Rotarians work together to fundraise for the Rotary Foundation, they donate to the Rotary Foundation, but they also work together in implementing projects, both locally, where local Rotary clubs work together, for example, on a district grant project, but also internationally. You've got Rotary clubs from Europe teaming up with clubs in America to do a project in the Middle East, for example. And that's a very unique thing to happen in this day and age. And I think it's also what makes our Rotary Foundation very unique. The connection it creates between Rotary clubs and Rotarians worldwide. So now my very last slide is back to the question mark, and I'd like to leave you with a question. I've answered the question what the Rotary Foundation is. I've tried to explain to you how it works, where we want it to go. But maybe a question you can discuss in your chat on your website when you present this presentation to your members is the question, who is the Rotary Foundation? So maybe that's something you can think about and post in the comments after this video. So that brings me to the end, and I'll turn it back to you.
Roger, you're on mute still.
Thank you, Peter, for just an excellent presentation. I would invite our other two club members to ask you questions at this point of time. And as I said before, Nick, this is your opportunity to get all of your questions answered so that you're totally knowledgeable about the foundation.
No, it really, thank you, Peter, because it really, I found your presentation to cover the, really very quite the beginning to the future, which is really great, and I appreciate that. I kind of wonder your role as a, you are a fundraiser going to raise funds. Where are you going to raise those funds? Like, are you going to other Rotary clubs, or are you trying to go to, like, where do you go to raise funds beyond just our donations within our club?
Okay, so I'm a major gifts officer, so I focus on major gifts, and that's usually a very personal thing to do. So I reach out to people who come to us with the wish to support maybe an area of focus or certain programs of the Rotary Foundation, but at a higher level. Sometimes people come to us and I'm just there to advise them on what to do with their giving. And of course, as a fundraiser, I also try to reach out to Rotarians and find new people who would like to support us at this higher level. I'm based in the Zurich office of Rotary International, and basically I work with Western and Eastern Europe.
Okay.
So I do quite some traveling for the Rotary Foundation. Sometimes I just visit donors at home, or I meet them for dinner somewhere. And sometimes, of course, I go to Rotary meetings like foundation seminars, or PETS is also a good example. I will give presentations and do also a bit of PR for the Rotary Foundation. And that's how I try to spread the word about the Rotary Foundation, but also try to get in contact with existing and potential new donors to the Rotary Foundation.
Great, thank you. That makes sense. I don't have anything else right now. I'm trying to think of the more, but I
don't have any questions. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a couple questions for you, Peter.
Sure.
Number one of our club members just received a Paul Harris Fellow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you give to Polio Plus, does that contribution go towards a Paul Harris Fellow?
Yes, it does. So as I mentioned in my presentation, the Paul Harris Fellow was launched 10 years after Paul Harris's death. And it was, I call it an official thank you of the Rotary Foundation for a gift of $1,000. And that hasn't changed since then. It's still an official thank you for a gift of $1,000. But we want the money for Paul Harris Fellows, the giving going towards Paul Harris Fellows, to go to our programs where the money is spent. So a Paul Harris Fellow is given in return for a gift of $1,000 to the annual fund, to Polio Plus, or to a global grant project, because people can also make cash donations to a global grant project, which are then matched by the Rotary Foundation 50%. The newest fund, the Disaster Relief Fund, also would give a Paul Harris Fellow. So giving to the funds where the money is spent, I think that's a nice way to summarize it. That's where a Paul Harris Fellow would be given as a thank you to the donor.
I note that, because I've been in Rotary for a number of years, that there are some people who have received several Paul Harris Fellows. Could you explain how that works?
Mm-hmm. So if a donor, after receiving a first Paul Harris Fellow, keeps donating and reaches a total giving level of $2,000, he would get a Paul Harris Fellow of the next level. And this keeps going until he reaches the level of major donor. Because in the Rotary Foundation, we call major donor any donor who reaches a total giving level of $10,000. So until $9,000, you would increase the levels of your Paul Harris Fellow and get new pins with the number of stones. But from 10,000 onwards, we stop the Paul Harris Fellows and we call you a major donor. And that's a different kind of recognition.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that What happens when you give the funds is that they are invested for basically 3 years. The capital of the fund goes directly to programs, but the interest that's generated by those funds goes to administration. Could you please explain that?
Yes. So it's correct that annual fund gifts, so only annual fund gifts, go into this 3-year cycle. So actually, it's a Swiss Rotarian who explained this to me once, that it was the past world president Bob Barth from Switzerland who was leading the committee that came up with this system. But by this, he said, I think that because he was from Switzerland, it's like the cows in the Swiss Alps. He says the farmer has a cow, he sends it up in the mountains in summer to graze, and the cow gives him back milk. And in the end, in winter, when he gets back the cows into the stable, he still has the cow, but he's been able to use the milk to make some profit. So that was kind of the explanation of Bob Barth, if I remember correctly. So the idea is that we invest annual fund gifts for 3 years, use the investment returns to pay for part of our administrative costs, and that then the money, the full amount, goes to the districts and also to the Rotary Foundation to be invested in grant projects. So this is correct, yes.
Does anybody else have any other questions of Peter at this point of time? Nick?
No.
At the bottom of our meeting is a discuss section, and I would invite all the members and guests to leave a comment there, in particular to answer Peter's question as to who is the foundation. And in addition to that, if you're a guest from a Rotary Club, if you put in your correct email address, then our club will send you a receipt of which you can give to your club secretary as a makeup. And as a member, please make sure that you fill out the attendance section, so like Shags, you can ultimately have, on a year-to-year basis, 100% attendance. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to, presentation back over to Peter to give his last words of wisdom. Take it away, Peter.
Well, first, of course, I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak at your club meeting. I think it's a fantastic format to be able to just sit in my home here in the evening, because it's evening here in Zurich. And be part of this meeting, which takes place around the world, but mostly in North America, I believe. I would like to thank your club for donating to the Rotary Foundation. I mean, there's a number of us out there, major gift officers, but also annual gifts officers. But we are too few people to thank every club in person. So let me make use of this opportunity and thank you in person for supporting the Rotary Foundation. And I believe your club has never applied for a grant, district or global grant. I know it might be a bit trickier for e-clubs to make use of this possibility, but you are supporting the Rotary Foundation. So in this way, you are taking part in this system of solidarity between Rotary clubs worldwide. But of course, should you once have a project that you would like some extra support for, and that fits into our areas of focus for a global grant project, or if it's a smaller project, you could also apply for a district grant. Make use of that opportunity. If you don't do it, that's fine. Others with very good ideas for projects will make use of this money. But one day the day will come when you might have something, and I would encourage you to try and make use of the opportunity to also apply for a grant from the Rotary Foundation. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and I look forward to attending some of your meetings in future.